Hi, I'm James Hall. Over the last 3 weeks, I've had the opportunity to learn and do a lot of reflection. As this course began, we were tasked to introduce ourselves as well as to provide a tour of our lives. This was an interesting time for me. I would often get to share who I am, but I don't usually get a chance to share who or what helps me and makes me who I am. 2 weeks before this class started, I had been working through the same topic in preparation for my current sermon series, but looking at it through who God says that I am. So as I began to reflect on that, it really made a challenge as I got into the work for this class. I was then challenged to look at how society has and continues to affect who I am and how I respond through things through our first discussion. I found this to be an interesting discussion. For me, it was important to look at how I use it and what I post and how I respond to things. From my fellow classmates, I gained a great amount of knowledge and insight as to how they use social media and how it either is both effective and destructive in our lives. This was not something that I had spent much time really thinking about. The other concept that came up was perceptions, because perceptions are often important, because they either show what is really going on or what we want to highlight as important when we're thinking about social media. Adler and Proctor stated in chapter 4, we can only make sense of what we know, and none of us know everything about even the closest people in our lives. I began to think about that question because it was interesting to me because I have lots of relationships and I know a lot of people, but I've never really thought about the fact that, do I really know who they are? And so I began to think about that. This was a great time for me to think about how God perceives me as because the perceptions that we have and because He knows all of us. He knows everything about us. In Matthew chapter 10 verse 30 it states, but the very hairs on our head are numbered, in the King James Version. This is to me a great reminder that if we would understand that He knows who we are and that He would go so far as to count the hairs on our heads, then He really is looking at me and He's investing in me. And when I get into relationships, I need to think and understand who people really are and begin to invest into their lives. And so that was really an eye-opener for me. The next concept was the concept of investment. Was a lesson for me that I thought was going to be kind of interesting because it talked a lot about, for me, was that I needed to look at how I invest in the people other than myself or people that I may really know about and what they're going through. Is, do I really show compassion? Do I really understand where they are? And that was through one of our discussion questions dealing with the Les Miserables. It was really to understand how important what was happening in their lives really affected the outcome of what they were able to experience. Adler and Proctor also pointed out that when new information becomes available, perceptions of other people change. And that was in chapter 4 as well. This was a great reminder to me, as it is one of those things that I always try to focus on in my work and in my ministry. People are always changing and growing, or they're dying, or they're withdrawing from the relationship. James chapter 1 verse 9 says, my dear brothers and sisters, be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to get angry. It is my opportunity to love on them and to practice better listening and encouragement to help keep them engaged in the relationships. I was also reminded of Proverbs 27 verse 9, which states that the heartfelt counsel of a friend is as sweet as perfume and incense. I think that this is the important investment in the relationship and being fully present and engaged, but not taking on their challenges and issues as my own, but sharing their burden with them and understanding and providing support for them. This is something that I have really felt compelled to practice, especially over these last 2 to 3 weeks, because it really brought some intentionality into the relationships that I was going through. I also recognize that it really does lend itself to getting into conflict at times. This week's biblical perspective summed it up well for me. We cannot expect perfect relationships and perfect peace in our fallen world. Yet we are called to resolve these inevitable conflicts in God-honoring ways. But we are not alone. God provides us with direction, support, and guidance along the whole community of believers. Paul provides us with a simple recipe for dealing with conflict. Reach out to others, seek God's guidance, and work towards resolution. See, that was in this week's summary of our biblical perspective, and to me, that really spoke volumes as I got into this subject for this particular paper. One of the most difficult things that I learned about myself these weeks has been that I know what to do, but often choose not to engage or experience exactly what is there to go deeper than I want to or feel led to go. But it's really important to have a relationship that is based on real friendship and real relationships to go deeper and to look according to the Word of God. All in all, I have learned that number one, it is important to know who I am so that I can tell others and understand who I am. Number two is that it's important to share what I want with others to know and provide background so that it's clear how I got to this place and what I went through to get there. The third thing is be clear and have a perception that is based on information and not judgment based on what I can see without a knowledge or information about them. The fourth thing I learned is that I need to be committed to building and participating in relationships that are built on honesty, authentic investments where God is partner, or at least I am listening to Him in order to guide me and to lead me and to keep me out of those sticky situations, and always to use the lens of compassion in order to see others grow. The fifth thing I learned is that I am a child of God. And in the end, I should act like I am and become a more relational person rather than always being reserved and using perceptions to drive my ability to engage into relationships. So this is just a snapshot of what I've learned and experienced thus far in this course. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you today.